What did you end up doing after college? You graduated. Where did you?
No, I went to the University of Iowa, and I just couldn't keep my mind on my studies. I was really concerned about the war, and I participated in the large demonstrations there, but I mostly spent a lot of time thinking about how to oppose the war. And I read a lot about history. I dropped out of college. I moved into a 1941 delivery van and lived in the woods for about 5 years north of Iowa City. Minimized my consumption and my financial interactions, and kind of had my Henry David Thoreau experience. It was a beautiful time in my life. I don't regret it at all. And I would encourage anyone so inclined to give it a try. This doesn't put me in such good graces with educators sometimes, but it's the truth. I really think it was very valuable for me. And when I dropped out of school, I realized that I was going to have to pursue my education. And so I did that independently. I read a lot. I became an electronic engineer, a radio engineer. I was a chief engineer at a radio station in Iowa City. I read a lot about foreign affairs. I read about Central America. I put together a solidarity project for Nicaragua. I shipped a lot of equipment down to Nicaragua, medical equipment, bicycles, sewing machines, clothing, shoes, all sorts of things. Through a Quaker organization in Florida. I shipped about 20 tons of stuff, and then over 4 years and several different trips, went down to Nicaragua, learned to speak, or I should say half speak Spanish. I'm not really entirely fluent, but sufficient to get along. Had a very interesting time, traveled a lot in Central America, studied computers, databases. I wrote the water billing system for a small town I lived in, Olin, Iowa. I then got hired. I wrote the state database of industrial byproducts for Iowa. I wrote that. And then I got hired by a telecommunications company, did software. And this is without any education at all in computers, all self-taught. I was put in a position of being an architect for very large billing systems in the telecommunications industry. And then, well, that caused a shift. I'd been salvaging metal and doing programming for a friend of mine who built electronic equipment, living very low income, and then suddenly I became like middle class as far as my income went. I bought then the old public school in Fayette, Missouri, which I own, and live there with my wife and kids. And we have built a community radio station there. So on our roof we have the antenna, and my wife is the director of programming. We work with the local officials, and the mayor comes in and does a show for us, and the county commissioner has, and so we have a lot of interaction now with the community of Fayette, Missouri.
So it continues. The activism continues.
It continues. I find it to be a very fulfilling way of life, honestly, to be engaged with the world and to pay attention to the world and to do the best we can, the best I can to interact with it.